Hey, everybody, welcome back to Build an Iconic Life. I'm here with Jerry Gerken again, and we didn't have a chance last time to really dive into his story because we were having such an interesting conversation. And when we got done with that podcast, I immediately reached back out to Jerry and said, "Hey, man, I think that there's some meat left on the bones. Would you be willing to come back and tell your story?" So everybody, I want you to tune into this one because Jerry's going to reveal to you why he's going and speaking on stages, why he's paid money to go speak on stages, and what his mission is based upon his experience. So stay tuned, everybody.
I came from the mud. There's dirt on my hands.
Welcome to Build an Iconic Life podcast. I'm your host, Chris Whitehead, and this podcast is dedicated to help you build a life with zero regrets by focusing on how you have everything you need to stand up, stand out, and live life on your terms. Let's dive right in. Jerry, you're back.
I came from the mud. I got dirt on my hands.
Dude, I love that song. I love that intro.
Every time I listen to it, I smile. It's cool.
Dude, there is not a human being on earth that has not faced struggle. Now, whether those people choose to go back into the mud or whether they choose to claw themselves out of it, number one, if you do and you're clawing out of it right now, I want you to know it doesn't have to be pretty. You just got to keep going, and the crabs will try to put you back. But that's why people like me and Jerry get on things like this to encourage you to keep going, because if you just won't quit and you hold on to your dream, God will meet you somewhere along that pathway and inspire you to keep moving forward. And the beautiful part about that is not what you get from it, although you will get a lot from it. It's that you will inspire other people along the way. And that's what Iconic is all about. And Jerry, I just want to say, bro, number one, thank you for coming back on the show.
100%. Thank you.
Number two, we just didn't get a chance to talk about your story. And I was like, man, I want to hear it. So you want to start off with what your mission is and what you're accomplishing and what you're doing right now, and then maybe start going back into the story a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So my mission is to give hope. I think a lot of our society right now, they've lost hope because of all the different things that have gone on in the economy. And it's cyclic. We talk about this, but so I share my experiences to give people some perspective that here's where I'm at now, but I got a lot of shit and a lot of different adversity that I've went through. That's why one of my core values is empathy, because I believe that everybody's got stuff, dealt with stuff, or is going to deal with something. So I'm very empathetic. So I surrounded myself with a bunch of crazy cool people like you. And then I was praying to God driving into work one day. And I said, okay, so God, you gave me all these people, you gave me all these tools, you've given me all this information over the last 3 or 4, 5 years, fast tracked. And what do you want me to do with it? And so I'm speaking this to God. And at that point in my mind, God told me, I want you to tell your story. And before, Chris, I could get the next question out was, how am I going to monetize this thing? He said, I'm always taking care of you, and I always will.
Whew.
And so that's
quiet and go do your job.
Right. Exactly. and framing it has been really easy because we all have life experiences. And so back up a little bit. I was adopted when I was 18 months old. I met my biological mother when I was 19, my biological father when I was 25. Biological father didn't even know I existed. The story is that she found out she was pregnant. He moved back to Tucson, Arizona, reached out to him. Well, he said that he was engaged to be married to his high school sweetheart. So my biological mother never told him. Mm. So that was interesting, but I always knew I was adopted when I was growing up. And it's again, there's God in all of my different stories. And this part right here, I was adopted by a Christian family in a small farming community, about 3,000 people. Was raised, never needed for anything. We weren't wealthy by any stretch, but I never needed for anything. But when I was 5 years old, my grandfather on my dad's side came over on the boat from Germany, and he was a permaculturist. Essentially, he had pigs, chickens, raised their own crops and made their own wine. So that was a cultural thing. And so I started drinking wine at 5 years old.
Oh, wow.
And so then that escalated throughout. So I was predisposed to alcoholism probably. So I started drinking at a young age just because I thought it was culturally acceptable. Well, then I get into, high school, and then I make the starting lineup. I was a sophomore in high school, and I made the starting lineup on our football team. I wasn't very fast. Actually, my nickname was Wheelchair Jerry because I was so slow. But at my high school, to make the starting lineup as an underclassman was rare. But I could hit. I could hit really hard, and so they put me at middle safety. So the 7th game of the season, we had homecoming, and I was invited to a bonfire by all the upperclassmen. I didn't even have a driver's license at that time. So my girlfriend drives me to this bonfire, drops me off. I go up to the bonfire, and it's a keg party. So we had a 0 tolerance policy at our school where no smoking, no drinking, no drugs, or you're immediately kicked off the team. So I go to this bonfire because I want to fit in with the upperclassmen. Everybody's drinking. Somebody pours me a beer, gives me a beer. Well, I've been drinking my whole life, so I was like, okay, this is normal. There was no peer pressure. I was just fitting in the normal places I was running. So I have a couple beers, and then I'm like, this is boring. I just want to get out of here. But there's guys stumbling, drunk, moving all over the place. And so my girlfriend picks me up. We go to the movies. I go home. Sunday morning, that following day, I find out, news travels fast in a small town, that one of the guys rolled his Mustang on the way home and got picked up for DUI. He was okay, but got picked up for DUI. Well, his dad, because in a small town, there's a lot of judgment. His dad forced him to tell who all was there. So that Monday, everyone got called into the coach's office individually and asked 2 questions. Were you at this bonfire? Yes. Were you drinking? So I got called in, and I told the truth. I was always told to tell the truth. I told the truth. I got kicked off the team immediately. Everyone else lied. Everyone else lied, with the exception of the kid that was in the accident because he couldn't. So you know what lesson I learned there?
What?
To lie.
Yeah.
Lie your way out.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there in the stands on Friday night next to my parents instead of being on the field.
Man.
And my grandmother on my mother's side always said that I was a bad seed. Said he's not part of our blood. He was adopted. He's not. And that just like solidified her opinions of me because I got busted and I got kicked off the football team. So fast forward my senior year in high school, I was a really good wrestler. So I was a better wrestler than football. I make a USA wrestling team. I traveled to Central America the day after I graduated high school. I was 17 years old. Traveled to Central America for 46 days. I wrestled in 4 different countries. When I fly into Toledo Express Airport, big banner, welcome back, Jerry. Come walking out of the airport causeway or whatever. Guess who the first person to greet me with a hug and a kiss was?
Who?
My grandmother that shunned me. And it speaks to your group. We talk about surround yourself with 5 people. You become the sum of the 5 people you hang out with or your group.
Yeah.
Even if they're family, man, it doesn't matter. But that was a lesson that I learned throughout that process, that I have to have discernment. And I pray for discernment every day with who I associate with. Because
what is the lesson that you learned with your grandma and that's, banner up and everything?
Well, she wasn't holding the banner. She was, but anyway,
yeah.
The lesson I learned was that you're going to have fair weather fans. You're going to have people that are going to be with you in the good times, but not in the bad times.
Woo.
Yeah.
How many times in my life, dude, we have gray.
Right.
We have gray.
Yeah.
But for and I've been a business owner for more than half my life now. For well more than 2/3 of that time, I was a people pleaser. I thought my value was only based on the new sale, the new benchmark, the hitting the 7 figures, the whatever. And what I did is I put people around me that would cheer me on, meaning people that were below me in aspirations. And the biggest lesson that I learned in business was to actually build my self-image to the point where I started putting employees around me that were better than me. And a lot of that comes from this, like learning how to lie. Like I didn't know that that was lying. I thought that that was being a good salesman. I thought that was being a good marketer. And then the same thing as you, I played sports like from the time I could walk. And I lived in a small town. And guess what? When you won, we were celebrated like Superman on the silver screen. Like it was amazing. And when you lost, we went back to practice and worked really hard, but we were always fighting for the crowd's attention. And it was such a small little world, but it taught me conditional love. And that's what I hear you saying too. And it really messes with a lot of people, doesn't it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So what happened next?
Well, so I went off to college. Wasn't ready mentally for college. So I dropped out, went to work for my dad. That wasn't what I wanted to do. Went and saw a movie, Top Gun. Decided I wanted to go in the Marine Corps. I didn't like the Navy's uniforms. I know Tom Cruise was in the Navy, but I didn't like the Navy's uniforms. So I went in the Marine Corps and wrestled for the Marines and planned on getting out early and go to college and wrestle in college. But then Desert Storm hit. And so in August of 1990, I flew over to Saudi Arabia for Desert Storm. And I'll fast track this story, but so I was in country 2 weeks. I was a truck driver attached to a tank battalion, and we were moving to the forward area outside of the Kuwaiti border, and we were doing a blackout drive. So you have a Hummer in the front, Hummer in the back, bunch of tanks, a bunch of trucks, no lights. You just have little cat eyes. You see these cat eyes in front of you. That's all you follow. I was by myself, I had my M16. I had a bed load of tank rounds and a trailer loaded with 5 tank rounds. So I'm following behind here, and we go off the hardball road into the sand, and the sand over there is real silty. It's not granulated. And my truck started to get stuck. So the convoy is still going, and I'm getting stuck. There's 2 trucks behind me, and then tail end Charlie, which is another Hummer. So I'm stuck. I can't move forward. So shut my truck down, and then they have air compressors on the truck. So we let some air out of the tires to act like a tank track. And I was able to start to move forward, but I slowed down because I don't see cat eyes in front of me. My gun is screaming at me, keep going, keep going. So I'm like, okay, I fully expected to run into these cat eyes. I didn't. So Chris, I'm driving 2 weeks in country by myself, no radio, no night vision goggles, just a gun. And I got a bunch of bombs on the back.
And what are you, like 18 or 19?
Yeah, I was 19, 20. Yeah.
Wow.
So I decided to stop my truck, shut it off, and try to listen. And I could hear the tank tracks moving in the desert, but the sound travels in the desert. So I didn't know what direction. So I was in a path, like a path in the desert, and there was a turn to the right. So I went to the right, fully expecting I was going to run into them. I went for a while, nothing. So I turned back around, went the other direction, and then I ran into the hardball road, which I knew that wasn't us. So I remembered a few weeks before we came over, there was a Marine that died of exposure. It was because, like, on Friday after you're done, they just cut you loose. You just got to be in formation Monday morning. So they forgot to pick this guy up, and I was in 29 Palms in the desert, and they forgot to pick this guy up. And Monday morning they realized he wasn't there. So they went to go back to where he was supposed to be, and he was gone. He tried to find his way back, and he ended up dying of exposure. So I remembered that when I was over there in this scenario. So I just went back to that little T in the path, shut my truck down, grabbed my gun, walked out about 50, 80 yards away from the truck because it was a bomb.
Yeah.
And I just laid in the sand and just waited, and doing a lot of praying, a lot of reciting, the Lord's Prayer, the Apostles' Creed, just all these things that I grew up with, just because I was scared, man.
Just something for comfort.
Yeah. Anything. And I had a little Iron Man watch that lit up in orange, and I kept tracking the time, and it was like 46 minutes by myself, scared and afraid, alone. And I see these little cat eyes coming, and it's my commanding officer. Boy, he ripped my rear end. But so I followed him back, and there was a little glow stick in the sand that I was supposed to turn, but I didn't know that. And I'm sitting up in a 5-ton truck, which is so many feet off the air. I never saw it, obviously. And I didn't even know what to do if I would have saw it, but I got reconnected with them. But the reason why I bring that story up is fear not is in the Bible 365 times. There's 365 days in a year, and fear not is in the Bible 365 times. But how do you overcome the fear and doubt? Because we all have fear and doubt. How do you overcome it? It's with knowledge and skill. In this scenario, where did I get the knowledge and the skill? The knowledge I got from the experience that I observed from this other guy. Okay, I'm just going to stay right here because they'll eventually find me. If I keep moving, I'll miss them. So that's where that knowledge comes in from life experience. And when you have knowledge and skill, that gives you the courage and confidence to overcome the fear and doubt. So if you frame it like this, you have fear and doubt, knowledge and skill, courage and confidence. And that can be applicable to all different things in your life.
I agree, man. I actually just wrote a post this morning on the socials, and it had a meme associated with it that basically said, don't worry about everybody else in the room. When you have real confidence, you just stay focused. And I was talking about rock climbing. Around the same age as you, I decided to free climb a 300-foot cliff, and about halfway up, I had to cross my legs over, which is a huge no-no. Like that's a really good way to lose your handhold and then fall to your death. And I remember, same as you, the first thing I did was pray. Like I was scared, 150 feet up in the air, looking at pine tree tops, and I was scared. I made the move. It worked out. I climbed all the way to the top. And the point that I was making about confidence was it comes from facing your fear. So many of us do what's easy, and it produces ego. Inflated. Ego's good, but inflated ego. And we're not willing to face our fears. And the truth is, it would have been easier for you to just keep moving around and searching. The hardest thing you could have done was sit your ass in the sand and wait. Because it probably every second seemed like a minute.
Oh.
But that's facing your fear. And it does produce the opportunity. Because, dude, your mind started racing. That's how you remembered. And that's how you were able to put together. Like, dude, the one thing I know is we solve algebraic equations by finding the constants in the variables. The other thing that will screw an equation up is when you have multiple variables. So let's take two fixed points, let them start moving around in the universe and see if we can connect them. The probability is way lower. Certainly. And so for 45 minutes or so, you set your ass in that sand, did whatever you had to do to occupy your mind, and just had faith that somebody would remember you. And yeah, you got your ass chewed out. So what?
Better than the alternative.
Absolutely.
Right?
So, dude, I fully 100% agree. So keep going, man.
So then after I get out, I do some time over there, rotate back, get out, go to college. Met my wife 2 weeks after I got out of the Marine Corps. That's a really cool story, but for time's sake, I won't go into that one. And then I graduate college. I was a college All-American wrestler, and I graduate college with a degree in sports medicine and education. My aspiration was to be an athletic trainer for the Cleveland Indians. That was one of my goals. But then I researched and saw that the divorce rate was really high for athletic trainers because they're always gone. And so I transitioned into education. So my wife and I got married because we were both non-traditional students, had our first baby. I got a picture of holding my oldest daughter, who's now 28, in my cap and gown. She was in a christening dress. When I graduated college, had 7 interviews, couldn't get a job. Completely didn't understand. I mean, here's a former Marine, college All-American, can coach, I can be your trainer. I mean, I had all these hats I could wear in these schools, and nobody picked me up. So I'm selling suits at JCPenney's part-time, substitute teaching, and volunteer coaching wrestling at a local high school. And a couple of my boys that was wrestling for me at local high school, their dad was a general manager of a car dealership. And I would go in and bullshit with him and just hang out. And I would watch these salespeople come in and out, in and out. And I'm like, this is like shooting fish in a barrel. I can do this thing. And he's like, I said, Jan, I need a job, because I had my last interview and school was getting ready to start. So I was going to be shuffling, doing these side hustles that I was doing. He said, you can sell cars, but you need to be a teacher. And up on my vision board, I have teacher. That's my life word. So I crossed my fingers behind my back and promised him I would go back into teaching. So I kept true to my word, because I do teach now, but I'm not in a brick and mortar building.
Yeah.
So I get in the car business, wildly successful. I made more money in the first year in the car business than I would have as a 20-year teacher. So it's kind of an oxymoron how our society pays people. But anyway, go in that for a while. I'm doing really well. Have our second baby, or we're getting ready to have our second baby. And I get wooed into the insurance industry. This guy at church says, oh, you can be a great insurance salesman. So you talk about the top 10 stresses in life. I took all this on at one time. I switched jobs, bought a house. My wife quit her job. We had a child, and I bought 2 new cars, all at the same time. Needless to say, me and Absolute Citron became really close. That's a vodka if you don't know what it is, for the listeners. And so then I wasn't making any money, and they're telling me just need more time. I said, I don't have any freaking time, man. I got all this responsibility. I need to make money. So selling insurance is like solitaire. Selling cars is like blackjack. It's spam. You sell cards, busting bugs, you get paid. Insurance, you got to go through all these different appointments and all this other stuff, and then long story short, I wasn't making any money, but I was really good at cards. Really, I grew up around playing cards. And so I would make appointments I would tell my wife I had appointments. I had a 2000 silver Chevy Lumina that I would jump in my car in Findlay, Ohio, and I would drive to Windsor, Canada, which was 108 miles. I knew exactly how long it was, to the Windsor Casino, because that was the only casino that was around. And I would intentionally put enough money in the ashtray of my Lumina so I could get back across the Ambassador Bridge back into the United States if I lost all my money in the casino. So I would go there, and I kept going there, and I would win and I would lose. But, I was just trying to do whatever I could, because I wasn't making money selling insurance. And the first warning shot that God sent past me, come whizzing by, when the waitress came up to me on a whatever day morning. I was sitting at a blackjack table, and she goes, hey, Jerry, so you want your coffee with cream? And I'm like, man, she knows my name. She knows what I drink. I'm here way too much. So that's the first one. So I leave, and I don't go back there. I switched back into the car business. I'm doing well. Then I switched to a different company, and I started making, double the money I was making at the other place. But the thing that never left me was chasing the hit. And that's what I came to the resolution later on. I was chasing a hit, because remember, I was on big stage. I wrestled in like 7 national championships in my career. So when I hung up my shoes, I wasn't getting that hit anymore. Yeah. Where was the hit? Then I started selling cars. I was getting hits from selling cars, but you sell enough things, that's not there anymore. So I wasn't chasing money. Initially it was because I needed to try to create revenue for my family. But then after my income went up and doubled, then I was just chasing the hit. So I'm abbreviating this story a little bit, but I would hide this from my wife, because we'd have joint bank accounts. I would hide this addiction that I had from my wife by going to cash advance places.
Wow.
And borrowing, getting money, and then with the thought process that I would make that money back plus, and then I would just pay that off and it would be cool. Chris, I had 7 cash advances out at one time. At one point, I would get paid, and then I would go get cash and go from one to the next one, cash, pay, reloan, pay, reloan, pay, reloan, pay, reloan. And then I'd start with this much and end up with like 40% of it.
Oh,
And I kept doing that cycle over and over and over again, thinking I was going to get the big win at the casino. So I would get up. I was calculated, man. I was calculated. I would wake up at like 1 a.m, grab a 6-pack of Bud Light Platinums, sneak out of bed. My wife's heavy sleeper. Kids were in bed. Jump in my car, drive up to the casino. Now there's one that's 45 minutes away from my house. So I'd have 5 of those beers, get a buzz on, reduce the inhibitions about losing money, and then go gamble. And then I would make sure I knew what time I had to get back in the car to drive back home before my wife woke up. So this went on for a while. And I'm driving. This is the turning point. I'm driving. I was 1 exit away from getting the hit. And my phone rings. It's like 2:15 in the morning on a Sunday. My phone rings, and it's my oldest daughter, who was in high school at the time. I didn't want to answer the phone. I mean, all this guilt and shame and embarrassment and all these things, the devil was just beating the shit out of me. Just all this stuff coming down on me because I was exposed. I thought I had everybody fooled, but I was exposed. And I didn't want to answer the phone, but I did. And she asked me a question. She goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm turning around." And I never went back. Yeah. I mean, I've been to casinos before, since, like on vacation or something like that, but it doesn't call my name. I mean, He had me by the noose. He was just dragging me there, dragging me there, dragging me there, And so that's my becoming iconic. I'm becoming more iconic because I have that experience, and I can share my experience with other people and be empathetic toward that. And so when I speak about that took me a lot of years to talk about, man. I mean, that's quite emotional. Usually I tear up when I talk about it, but I'm getting better at it. The more I talk about it, I'm getting better at it. And I've removed myself from the story. It's not about me. It's about me sharing with others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But your daughter, the amount of courage she had to have in order to confront you, God bless her, man.
Yeah.
And talk about that real quick, because I think a lot of people, and me included, dude, I've had Robin, say things, and I don't listen to her for months and months and months. And, sometimes they're not said in a way that's very easy to discern
Right.
with a lot of volume. But my whole life, some of us that are chargers, we put the head down and we make a doorway.
Right,
It works until it doesn't. But talk about, for people, maybe it'll jar somebody loose before they have to hear the Mustang turning over, before they have to have their daughter call them, or maybe because you're willing to talk about it a little bit, when their daughter, quote unquote, does call them, they pay attention. What was the emotion that you went through when you finally picked that phone up and she asked you that?
Oh, it was, well, initially the guilt, the shame, the embarrassment, all those things, because I was holding it all close to me. I thought I had everybody fooled. But then after I told her that I'm not going back, or I told her I'm turning around, it was a ton of relief off of me, because I was hiding everything, hiding the money from my wife, because she didn't see that. She couldn't see I was gambling because I was doing it outside of that. And she had no idea, because it's a totally separate thing.
Yeah.
But just that, I mean, it's just a weight lifted off, and it was just like that noose that was around my neck was no longer there. And, some people have to go through more counseling, different things to get rid of addictions. But that was enough for me to have my firstborn daughter call me out on my bullshit and ask me what I was doing, because I was essentially, it's my ethical duty to be successful for my family.
Sure.
And I was not being. But I was not being, because I was losing monies, losing time. I wasn't present in conversations because I was distracted, because that's all I was thinking about. I say this all the time: where your mind goes, the body follows. And so you start thinking about something, it starts to manifest or build in your brain, and then you start to go that way. And that's what happened with me with gambling and alcohol. They went together. If I started drinking, then I started thinking about gambling. If I wasn't drinking, I wasn't thinking about gambling. Or if I started thinking about gambling, I started drinking to reduce the inhibition, so I could give myself permission to go do it. But yeah, just the freedom, the release of that. And then, you can always clean up, I can't say always, because sometimes, my wife stuck with me, man, through a lot of shit. Over 30 years married now. And she's a godsend for sure.
I remember starting my first business, and I had no business starting a brick and mortar remodeling company. I'd gone to college for computer science, and then I worked a job, and just they told me when I could pee and when I could eat lunch. And here I am, the number one salesman in the Eastern region. And I'm like, hey, boss, can I go to lunch? No, not yet. Okay. Hey, boss, I really got to pee. Yeah, well, you need to wait. We got a whole bunch of people we got to serve right now. And I just started going, something's wrong with this scenario for me, not, but I started a business. And Jerry, I did every damn thing in my power to find a shortcut to success. And what I ended up doing was wasting a shit ton of time instead of just paying the full price. And, I have my reasons, I have my excuses, I have my whatever, but very, very much like you. And one of the reasons I'm so grateful to God is God's always present. He's always, whispering, ready, waiting. It's just whether or not we want to lean in or not. And I finally had a breaking moment, and I leaned in just like you. And for me, it was very similar. Now, I have had to do a lot of work since then, not so much cleaning up my past, because I was lucky enough not to get caught doing a bunch of dumb shit that I did. But I had to clean up a lot of my mindset. I had to clean up a lot of not taking shortcuts. I had to clean up a whole lot of what integrity truly means. And that's an internal thing. Doesn't have anything to do with you or what anybody else sees about me, or that's my fight. And my experience has been that is the shortcut. I was able to accomplish in 2 years what I couldn't accomplish in 20. That's how much of a shortcut it is when you mean it. And your story is extremely inspiring, because there are a lot, and I don't know as much about the ladies because they don't talk about it as much, at least in the circles that I'm in. But I know a lot of us men, we've had the taste of victory, and then it gets ripped away from us, and it looks like it's millions of miles away, or it's over some horizon we can't even see the land. And we're like, look, man, I will do anything to taste that right now. And it can take us down some really dark roads. And the story that you're sharing is one of not only redemption, but it's a calling for other young people, as well as, doesn't matter what your age is, to not only straighten up and fly right, monkey, but that you can have the success that you want. You're speaking on stages now. You've manifested that. You have paid a price for that. You didn't pay tens of thousands of dollars to go speak on other people's stages that have a huge marketing. You did it in the arena that you knew that you were being called into, and you've driven hours out of your way, invested your own money and your own time to go coach people. And dude, even in your 50s, you've gone to high schools and wrestled with young men that are all state guys. You got a very dynamic way of communicating with folks, and you're doing it as a mission, brother.
Yes.
And I support you, number one. And the reason that I do is because you're authentic with it. And it's not about the price. It's not about what you get out of it. It's about this legacy that you're passing on. And what do you believe that legacy is, sir?
Man, speak of legacy, I always think about Zalmanoff, because he's on completely the opposite side. And I think, I said this on your last podcast, though, do the next right thing. I just think that that's it, and in the beginning, we were talking about, my purpose is to provide hope, hope to people, because with my stories and my experiences, there's always one thing, there's hope, because there's an outcome. I didn't talk about me dying almost, it'll be a year ago on the 27th that I almost died, and when my wife found me laying on the kitchen floor, bleeding like a stuck pig, I was unconscious in my underwear at 2:30 in the morning, because my heart stopped. And she had PTSD, and she was asking, what if, but my message is, it's not what if, it's what is right now. It's not what if he would have died, what if he wasn't here anymore, what if, because we ask ourselves what if a lot, in reflection, but what is what's important, because we're not promised tomorrow. So it's what is right now, this present moment. That's what is. You and me talking about all kinds of stuff. That's what is. That's what's important. So yeah, legacy. I just hope that when my first book finally gets completed, that it'll be something that people can read and maybe can help them through some of their struggles, or it'll resonate with some people, just like when I speak on stage.
The message that I want to send through this podcast, through our coaching programs, through the way we post online, because we're crazy, is that if I can do it, you can too. But if you never give yourself an opportunity, no one else is going to give it to you. And if they do, you're probably going to fuck it up anyway because you weren't ready for it. So what Zalmanoff talks about, what he and I talk about, we're both memento mori kind of people. Remember that you're going to die. And that little flame inside of Iconic is a representation of the seed of greatness that's inside of each one of us. Brother, you and I have already accomplished lots of things, already survived a whole bunch of dumb things. I have 20-year-olds and an 18-year-old. You have people that are getting close to 30 years old. And we're at a stage in our life where, yeah, we're going to keep accomplishing. We're going to keep doing, but it's not about us anymore. It's about passing that torch on to the next generation of people so that we can build a country as well as a world full of leaders, full of people that are willing to shine their light. And the courageousness of you writing a book, the courageousness of you stepping on stage, of you actually turning that car around, answering that phone call from your daughter. No, dude, you knew that by answering that phone that it was over. You knew. You were already coming to that conclusion probably weeks, if not months beforehand. You were just like every other gambler, quote unquote, in the world. When I get caught. But you knew, and you did it anyway. You did the right thing anyway. And that's all we're here to do, is to say, hey, no matter what's happened in your life, friend, no matter how far down the pathway you've gone, trust me, we can find examples of other people that have done that and worse. So don't use it as an excuse. Use it as a reason to turn around and to be a better version of who you are. The truth is that is when your life really begins, because you're not running away from your own shadow anymore. And it's okay if you were a hero when you were younger and you fell into darker, deeper times. There are men and women around, and Jerry, we know them both, that will hold your hand, that will sit there with you, that will be empathetic and not judge you, and still kick you in the ass and tell you to get up and give it one more good shot. Because that's what we do for each other, man.
Yes, sir.
I really appreciate you. We're going to put some links out of how to connect with you again. And dude, when you're done with that book, trust me, we have a whole network of people that are ready to buy it, man.
That's awesome, man. I always love chopping it up with you. And I look forward to just continuing to grow as the Iconic network just is blowing up. And I appreciate you so much.
I appreciate you too, Jerry. And I'll never forget you sending that damn picture of your head stitched up and bleeding. Hey, y'all almost died. It was like, what?
13 stitches. Yeah. 6 broken ribs, damn hardwood floors.
I know, but look at you now.
Right.
Look at you now. I love you, man. I hope you have a great day. And everybody, we'll see you in the trenches.
I came from the mud. There's dirt on my hands. Strong like a tree. There's roots where I stand.
Hey friend, if you enjoyed listening to this podcast, please leave a review and subscribe to catch future casts. If you really enjoyed this episode, make sure you share it so others can benefit from it as well. I'll see you in the trenches.